Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So there's some wacky, weird things going on in Yemen. For several years, the U.S. government has been dropping bombs from drones in Yemen. But that's not the weird part. What is... I don't know if weird is really the right word, because back when I was in middle school, junior high, Yemen was two countries. There was a North Yemen and a South Yemen. And at some point, the two countries merged into just Yemen. But things were not necessarily peaceful or good in Yemen, and there have been... basically there's been a civil war going on for a long time. And the rebels, who are known as the Houthis, well, apparently they have now taken over the capital, and that is what is weird about what is going on in Yemen. The president, I believe it was the president, attempted to resign, but the parliament did not accept the resignation, and now there's the talks or the rumors being speculated that now that the rebels have taken over, that maybe South Yemen can secede from Yemen after this weird, long sort of civil war that's been going on pretty much since, I think it's been going on pretty much since the two countries officially merged together. I've got several stories from antiwar.com that will definitely clear this up. The first article is from Jason Ditz, was published on Sunday. So it came out yesterday. It says Sunday's emergency session of Parliament on Yemeni President Abdurabu Mansour Hadi's resignation was canceled at the last minute following a walkout and behind-the-scenes negotiation by the pro-Hadi parties. The parliamentary parties accused the Houthi rebels of reneging on a secret agreement to reject Hadi's resignation, a claim that was not directly answered by the Houthis. After this, the parliamentary session was scrapped quickly, with some members of parliament from the same parties claiming the Houthis weren't letting anyone into parliament, while others said the parliamentary president was simply not back from a visit to Saudi Arabia. The Houthis have effectively full control over the capital city of Sana'a and much of the rest of the country's west. The resignation of President Hadi and his cabinet came amid stalemated negotiations over the draft constitution, which led to clashes between the Houthis and the Prime Minister's security forces. So that's one article. Another article, also written by Jason Dietz, also yesterday, sort of it looks at it a little differently. And it says that the chaos may actually be South Yemen's chance to secede. So this article says, after the 1994 Civil War and annexation by the Salah government, the last vestiges of South Yemen ceased to exist. Over 20 years later, the region's lingering desire for independence seems to be getting an opportunity to reassert itself. For years, attempts to hold secessionist rallies in the former southern capital of Aden have been met violently by the Sana'a-based government, whether by Salah or his successor, President Hadi. With Hadi's resignation last week, Sana'a's ability to crush such public expression of opposition is limited. Even the security forces, who normally carried out the orders of the government, are now saying they won't be receiving any orders out of Sana'a. It's not a complete shock. There's no one to send such orders. Yemen seems to be splintering along several fronts, with the northern Houthi rebels controlling the capital and most of the west coast, while al-Qaeda in the in the Arabian Peninsula, and various tribal factions hold much of the inner territory. Aden and the core of South Yemen, however, seems to be up for grabs. And something that I always thought was kind of odd, and I'm looking at the map, and I'll post the link here in the show notes so that you can, pull it up and see the map for yourself. What is called South Yemen is actually more to the east of what was called North Yemen. So it's not really split along a north-south border. It's more an east-west, although the line does kind of go at a slight diagonal. And one is slightly more to the south. But again, it's more an east-west sort of thing, but they were always called North and South Yemen. And the third article about Yemen that I have is actually about the Houthi rebels themselves. Apparently, the Houthis are more moderate than the U.S. presents them. And that being, by U.S., it means the Obama administration, not all 300-plus million people in the United States. But isn't this sort of true with every sort of faction that's anywhere around the world that the U.S. government decides that they don't like? Is they always try to paint them as, they're extreme, they're radical, they're, they never say, oh, yeah, they're moderates, but we've got to go kill them anyway. They always point them as, if it wasn't for us drone bombing Yemen, we would all be speaking Yemeni right now. Or some other line of BS that most people that, actually have a functioning brain will realize is BS, but a lot of people don't really pay attention, and they're, we have to go kill them because I don't know Yemeni. I can't speak Yemen. I don't know how to do that. So, yeah, we have to go kill these people because apparently, they're bad because that's what the president said. Well, the article here from antiwar.com says, from the Obama administration's perspective, the Houthi rebels who control the Yemeni capital of Sana'a are a big problem. Officials make no bones about it, condemning them as extreme anti-democratic proxies of Iran. Yet the primary problem from the U.S. perspective is that the Houthis, long sequestered into the impoverished far north of Yemen, are getting in their way of understanding, or rather getting in the way of their understanding with a string of military dictators, most recent President Abdurabu Mansour Hadi. Hadi was elected in a U.S.-backed single-candidate ballot, which President Obama lauded as a model for the region. Hadi was pro-U.S. coming in and has given the administration free rein with the drone war, something the Houthis may not do. And this is very important. This is me speaking, not the article. It's very important here to note that the president who resigned, but yet the Parliament has not accepted his resignation, so technically he's still the president. He's been very supportive of the U.S. military just dropping bombs anywhere in his country. Kill whoever you want. I'll say that they were insurgents. I'll say that they were Al-Qaeda. I'll say whatever you want me to say, just don't kill me. Well, the Houthis, they're not happy about it. And there's more. I'll explain when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system and to fully capitalize on that decision in their fundraising efforts. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So the article here from antiwar.com, let me just back up to this last paragraph that I finished the last segment with. It says Hadi being the president of Yemen who attempted to resign, but Parliament has not accepted his resignation. They were supposed to have met yesterday. There's conflicting reports about why they didn't meet. Some saying that the Houthi rebels prevented anybody from going in. Other people saying, no, like there were secret talks and they failed, so we're not meeting. But Hadi was elected in quotes in a U.S.-backed single-candidate ballot, meaning he was the only person on the ballot, and anyone who cast a ballot that wrote in the word no or not this guy or attempted to in any way vote for anyone other than Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, those votes were discarded. They were not counted. So, you've got one guy on the ballot. You can't vote against him. If you attempt to, that ballot gets thrown out. So, of course, he's elected. And President Obama called this a model of democracy for the region. Hadi, of course, was pro-U.S. Surprise, surprise. And he gave the Obama administration free rein with the drone war. That's something that the Houthis probably will not do. The claims against the Houthis don't hold up particularly well to scrutiny either, with the extreme rhetoric paper thin, and the Houthis following an unusual brand of Shiite Islam that doesn't put them on particularly friendly terms with the Iranian government. And it's important here because the claim is that the Houthis are fighting a proxy war for Iran. But, well, they're not following the same teachings of Islam, so it seems very unlikely that the Houthis would be fighting a proxy war for Iran. The article here continues. It says, other than putting themselves in a position to push through reforms in a draft constitution centering on long-time grievances, the Houthis and others have had against the Salah Hadi regimes, the only real focus they've shown in fighting is against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, aiming to take back territory from them that the Yemeni military had long been unable to recover. For the administration, the only question that needs answering is if the Houthis will look the other way during the drone war, the same way that Hadi has, although it's likely they won't, the U.S. will continue to demonize them. So as long as the Houthis don't do what the U.S. government wants, then the Obama administration and whoever's the next president and whoever's the next president after him, as long as the Houthis are still there and not doing what the U.S. government wants, then the Houthis are going to be talked about as like these horrible people that need to be killed. Although I'm not sure if the Houthis are the ones necessarily being targeted with the drones, but they very well could be, because nobody really knows who's being killed by drones in Yemen. Because you've got the Yemeni president that whenever a drone gets dropped, he's like, oh yeah, they were insurgents. They were possibly al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And that's all anybody ever says. Nobody does investigation. They don't do DNA. They don't try to actually figure it out. Or if they do, it's months and months down the road and nobody really cares by then. And the Obama administration, they get to tell, we killed 15 more insurgents today. And it's absolutely ridiculous, and the drone war just needs to stop, not just in Yemen, but in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, where it was happening, Somalia, and anywhere else around the world that it might possibly happen in the future. It needs to not happen. There don't need to be remote control airplanes flying around dropping bombs on people. So I've got some other news that is not focused on war necessarily. Well, at least not a drone war. It's kind of another kind of war, but I don't really know what you would call this. In Detroit, Michigan, there is a man who is possibly going to wind up going to jail for failing to pay child support. Not a big deal, right? Because that happened, deadbeat dad should be punished. Well, the problem is the child that he is accused of not paying child support for is not his child. The story comes from ABC 6. This is actually out of Philadelphia, but they do cite the local Detroit television stations. Carnell Alexander walked into the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice on Friday. Hall of Justice, contradictory term there. There is no justice in a court. But Carnell Alexander walked into the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice on Friday, knowing in moments he could lose his freedom. Though DNA tests have proven the child is not his, Alexander still owes more than $30,000 to the state of Michigan because the child's mother claimed he was the father to get welfare benefits. Under Michigan law, that means that Alexander owes child support. But an attorney who saw Alexander's story on the news wanted to help. Cherika Harris says, "I'm trying to help him with his future." Alexander says, "I'm almost homeless, I'm almost in jail, and I'm out of work. My money is being threatened to be taken." Alexander says that the law needs to be changed so that when this happens, as it too often does, according to ABC 6, other men don't become dad by default. And this is something that it's really sad to where it's almost a guilty until proven innocent sort of thing here. And even after being proven innocent, you're still not innocent. So I don't even know what to compare this to, but it's absolutely horrible. So you've got this man who, whether or not he has children, I don't know, but there's a particular child that he is accused of being the father of. And DNA tests have proved that he is not the father of this particular child, but yet the government for the state of Michigan is saying that he owes $30,000 in back child support because the mother got welfare benefits and claimed that he was the father. Even though they know that he's not the father, doesn't matter because his name was put down on the paperwork saying he's the father. But he is possibly going to wind up going to jail. The article continues with a quote from Alexander. It says, "We can be defaulted into being a father of a child that's not ours. I don't understand that law, but that's the law that's in place." At court on Friday, Alexander luckily was not sent to jail, but his case does remain open, which means that some point in the future, Carnell Alexander could wind up going to jail for refusing to pay child support or refusing to pay enough child support, because I don't know if he's given anything, but because they say you owe $30,000 in child support for a kid that's not yours. Doesn't matter that it's not yours. We still say you owe, so pay up or go to jail. So hopefully things work out for Carnell Alexander, and I'll be back in just a moment on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for t-shirts, precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. There's an Amazon shopping iframe built into the website, or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. That's shop.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Apparently, the government of India is hoping to help out people that are unbanked. But they're doing it in, I would say, not the right way, primarily because the government's getting involved, and secondarily because they're trying to use technology to help them actually get attached to a bank. Now, I'll explain why I think that's a bad thing as I'm reading the article, but let me just delve into this a little bit. The article comes from Reuters. It says India is betting that mobile phone vendors, fuel stations, and corner stores can help it put basic banking within the grasp of hundreds of millions of its poor people living beyond the reach of traditional bank branches. The clock is ticking down to a February 2nd deadline for applications to set up so-called payment banks under new rules that would allow successful bidders to offer services such as remittances and deposits, but not loans. So, what you have here, it's basically, a bank that doesn't do loans. So you'll follow me in just a bit when I explain why this is not such a great idea and why free market should actually be able to go in and help these people with cryptocurrencies. So the article here continues. It says the regulations announced by the central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, reflects a realization that traditional banks alone can't achieve the objective of financial inclusion championed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In a 4-month campaign to end financial untouchability, Modi has opened 115 million new bank accounts, yet of those, 80 million have no money in them, underscoring the huge challenge he faces in delivering on his promise. Backers of the payments banks say they could help bring those accounts to life by bridging the gaps from bank branches in towns to India's 600,000 villages, making it easier to send money home, collect state benefits, or do business deals. So one thing that, let me just sort of go off on a tangent and explain why I think that they're doing this all wrong. They're using government to institute regulations that would allow people that are currently unbanked to be able to be banked. And one of the reasons that's listed here is so that they can get state benefits and do business and send money home. Well, two of those things are good things, the sending money and doing business. Those are good. Got no problem with them. And Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies would greatly benefit the people of India. And the reason I say this is because what they're trying to do with this is, use like mobile phones and corner news stores and whatnot. Well, if you have Bitcoin And Bitcoin's already helping millions of unbanked people in Africa, be opened up to broader opportunities. Well, there are things such as Coinapult, where you can send Bitcoin using text messages. Obviously the term isn't text, it's SMS, but I don't know what the letters SMS actually stand for, but, it's what everybody knows as a text message. So you can somehow send Bitcoin using text messages. And that's possible right now in Africa. It's possible, in the U.S., Coinapult, I think they're headquartered down in Panama, so you've got people in Central America doing this. The bit drop that's happening in March down in Dominica, they're going to be working with Coinapult and giving out cell phones and helping people get connected to where people are going to use Bitcoin on their dumb phones, not a smartphone. I'm not talking about downloading an app. I'm talking, like one of these old school flip phones that like your grandparents would use where, you just push buttons. Like one of those you can use Bitcoin with. And I think that would definitely help the people of India if they could wind up. It seems as though they're trying to get the technology, using cell phone stores and turning those somehow into a bank. But if you could, instead of having government regulations, you could have some free market people go in and explain to them, hey, here's this technology, and the government isn't going to be able to touch it, or at least right now they can't. Of course, they could wind up trying to do all sorts of things, but there's no real way to connect someone to a Bitcoin address. Now, yeah, obviously, I've got a Bitcoin address posted on fppradio.com. So you could make the assumption that that is mine, but it's not like a bank account that has my name written on it and has identifying numbers on it. So Bitcoin is something that could certainly help the people of India, and you don't need to implement new regulations to be able to do that. The article here continues, Bindu Ananth, a member of the RBI committee that designated the payment bank rules, said there's an entirely new set of actors. We said let's create a regulatory framework that allows the participation of non-banks. Mobile operators and prepaid wallet players are expected to lead the charge, seeking to add transaction fees to revenue streams from products such as phone minutes and bill payments. And one thing that's very beneficial about Bitcoin is instead of having these 3% plus whatever cent fee, I've seen some of the thing where it's 3% plus a 20 cent per transaction fee. With Bitcoin, you're paying maybe a nickel, if that, on the transaction, and that money winds up going to the people that are mining and keeping the thing going. So you're not paying money to a bank or to a government. You're paying, and it's a voluntary thing, so you could totally leave that off. Of course, your transaction would take longer, and you run the risk of the transaction not going through after 24 hours. But still, 5 cents as opposed to 3% plus 20 cents per transaction, that's a lot cheaper. And for people that are not banked, that adds up a lot. And even for people that are banked, like big companies, they wind up saving millions of dollars. Or let me rephrase that. They could wind up saving millions of dollars on transaction fees if they wind up, going purely to crypto instead of using credit cards and other, traditional bank sort of things. The article continues. It says retailers are interested too. Future Group, one of India's biggest with a presence in more than 100 cities, says it will apply for a permit to be one of these non-bank things. There's more to the article. I'll post the link in the show notes. You can finish reading for yourself. But I just think that, this is a really good example of a country that is doing it wrong when trying to help their unbanked. If you step out of the way, remove regulations, then technology can come in and help these people. But the Indian government is not trying to do that. Don't forget the AMA on Wednesday. Ask Me Anything, AMA at FPTradio.com.